They're all really are. Morning again, the same date though, April 22nd, 2025. Present with us now is Disaster Emergency Services Coordinator, who is Doug Dodge. And from that being said, Doug, would you lead us on what's going on here, please?
Good morning, commissioners. We just like to do a quarterly kind of a brief update, let you guys know what's going on in my world and kind of what's coming up. That's the main purpose. I just wanted to make sure we continued these quarterly, roughly. And so just wanted to primarily give you an update on the upcoming season and just kind of give you an idea of what's going on with my office. As you can see from the handout, things are in pretty good shape. We obviously have persistent drought that's ongoing. It's better than it was at this time last year, but it's still not perfect. Our snowpack is at roughly average for this time of year. It's a little bit low. We typically get a bigger storm this time of year. You can see that the black line is kind of dove off there on the snow water equivalencies. Usually we'll get a impactful event and still hold out hope that that'll come. But one of the biggest impactors for our fire season is the precip we get between now and through June. So snowpack is not fantastic, but it's not terrible either. I've seen it worse. So
do you know where they measure this one?
There's a couple of them in here. So this one, this is by drainage. So when it says in Boulder, it's the Jefferson River drainage is what they're talking about here. And there's several sites.
Satellite, I guess they.
Well, this one I think is based on their snow tell sites.
Okay.
I believe this specific graph, and then there's another one we have two drainages that they count. The other one, they just have a naming convention. They call this one Helena Valley, and this is essentially everything north of Boulder Hill, which includes obviously the quick repair and stuff. And then the Jefferson one, the one that says Boulder, is the rest of Jefferson County. So, and it's just based on the snow tell sites.
This year's been fun. You get 2 feet of snow here and you don't get anything
right
here at the.
Yeah. Yep, and there's areas and I'll go into that, but we are seeing wildfire occurrence, and as I'm sure you're aware, some of it primarily it's just people debris burning, and we like to call it sport burning season, where we have folks debris burning and it gets into because the grass hasn't greened up yet. So still dry in a lot of areas, so we're seeing fires take off. They're not growing of any size, and able to catch them all. So, but that's something we deal with every spring. So anyways, that's where we are as a season. The other item I have in there, and that last item, and this gets into the weeds a little bit, but the ERC energy release component, this is one of the main things we look at when it comes to when we need to close debris burning and things like that. Your blue line is the current status, and you can see it's drying out. We usually end up closing when it gets consistently close to that first dotted line. We're obviously climbing some, and it's actually pushed some of the maximum records for this time of year as far as fuel dryness, but it's still not to the point where we want to consider closing, in my opinion. Things are gonna green up, and once that happens, that's gonna come back down. Usually, in my experience, that's what we've seen. So anyway, so that's where we are with that. Any questions on any of that? Continuing on then, plan updates. I just got notice last week, the hazard mitigation plan, which it used to be called the pre-disaster mitigation plan. That has been approved by FEMA, finally pre-approved. So now we have to, I'm gonna have to bring it before you, and then I'll offer it to the city of Boulder and the town of Whitehall. If they want to approve it, they can. But it has to be approved by the county commissioners, and then we resubmit it to FEMA with that vote, and then they'll put a final blessing on it, and then we qualify for certain mitigation grants. So it's an important plan to keep updated, and its primary purpose is A, to identify project areas that we may need to fix in the future, and B, depending on what happens nationally with funding, which we all know, I'm not sure what's going to happen with that, but important to have in place. So it's been a process that's been going on for about 2 years. So I will be calling to get on your agenda for that in the future, just for your situational awareness. Also doing a lot of hazmat updates. I took a pretty interesting course this year where I'm redoing the site plans for the fixed site hazmat locations, so we have obviously the mine in southern Jefferson County. Ash Grove is another one. And then some small places with primarily batteries from cell phone tower sites, that kind of stuff, sulfuric acid, so not hugely impactful. But anyway, updating some of the plans for that fixed site location, so.
Does that cover the explosives outfit down there?
Correct, yep. Yeah, that's a separate one, but yeah,
it's
I think it's called Orica, it used to be called
it is.
Orica, now it's, anyway. So yes, those site locations are, although it, depending on whether it's classified as a hazmat, depends on how much they have there at any given
Oh,
time,
okay.
and so that varies from, so Marks Miller is a good example, he's not a tier 2, that's what it's called, a tier 2 reporter anymore, because of the quantities he doesn't have in that reportable amount. He still has some there. It just doesn't, he keeps less of it, so he doesn't have to report that much. So it's still a hazard and it's still there, but it just crosses
Not
that
enough.
line. Right. So that's what's going on with plants. Grants is the big thing. As I've talked to you guys about, the grant that funds my office, so now we have 2 reimbursements out waiting for them from the state. My Q1 and Q2. Between the 2 of them, it's around 15 grand that I'm waiting on from the state, which they're waiting on FEMA to go through their grant review. And my previous understanding has not changed in that they were looking for any tie to sanctuary stuff or anything like that. So I feel confident that we'll get that. I just don't know how long it'll be. And so anyway, I will let you know as soon as I know from Terry, when we get that reimbursement. I would imagine the state will be letting me know too, but obviously kind of on pins and needles for that. The other 3 grants, the DNRC grants those are all state funded, and so they aren't impacted. Those are all in progress. I actually just put in a claim for a couple of those. Those will be reimbursed on a fairly quick basis. DNRC is really good about that, in my opinion. The Homeland Security grant's a big one. I'm waiting on that. I don't know what your thoughts are, but it's in the same boat as these other 2 grants. It's successful, but it's about a $70,000 grant, and I just am uncomfortable about ordering it and having the stuff here and not being able to pay the bill. Or paying the bill and then having us sit on that much for I don't know how long. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that. I don't have direction as far as the period of performance is September. So my game plan was kind of just I was hoping.
It's gotta be before September.
Correct. I have to have the procurement done I don't have to have it, but I have to be able to show that it is expensed. And there may be an extension, but my game plan was to see how this, the EMPG funding goes. And if we finally get some of that, then maybe we can have a more in-depth conversation about whether we should pull the trigger on this one or not. I just don't know what your comfort level is there.
Is that the radio stuff?
It
you're
is,
talking about?
it's for lack of it's a simulcast equipment, so it's 4 radios that is mobile and I can set it up. The primary purpose is down at the concert site, so I can put in Fish, Wildlife and Park frequency, I can put in whoever, highway patrol, and then it all goes out on one channel at that location. And then it also includes a console for dispatch to coordinate all that stuff. So that's the primary purpose of it, and there's no match, so it's 100% federally funded. So, but the question is it's reimbursable.
Is it gonna be funded?
Well, right, exactly. Or is it gonna go away? And I don't think it is, because it's already been, signed and granted out there. As far as I'm aware, they're not taking stuff away that's already been awarded. The agreements are in place. But the question for me is how long that's gonna be. And I don't know the comfort level of the county sitting on a $70,000 reimbursement for how long. I mean, I know to me, that's a big number. My biggest thing is I just want guidance from you guys on how you think I should proceed. If you have any advice or.
I think what you're doing is right. See how your grant comes in. If it comes in late, that one's probably gonna come back in late as well.
Right.
I don't anticipate them pulling back anything that's already been awarded.
I don't.
Puts a lot of people in a tough spot.
Yeah, I don't either.
We
that's,
still got some time to sit on it a
Yeah.
little bit.
so that's what I was kind of, unless, I mean, I just am trying to be clear and show
That's
what
all-
my
that's
plan
all
is.
through done, right?
What's that?
Is that all
Yes,
through done?
yep, it's all through done, so, and he's, he's good to work with, so.
Yeah.
Is that a different grant than the updates on the repeaters?
Correct, yeah, the updates on the conventional repeaters, that's already in progress, actually, I just put in a claim for that
Okay.
last week. Because that's the DNRC grant,
Oh,
which is,
That's good to go.
that's good to go, yeah,
Okay.
which is nice.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm just gonna continue on that unless you folks feel otherwise.
No,
on
I
that.
think you're good for now.
Okay, I did put in for next year for another small Homeland Security grant for drug/explosive testing unit. It uses lasers and you don't have to take whatever it is out of the bag, so it keeps you from having to expose yourself.
Interesting.
So we'll see. They're still accepting applications, but for next year, who knows if it's even gonna exist next year, so. But still gotta put in for it.
Who gets to hit the explosive with the laser? That's what I.
Right, exactly, that's what I
How
was
far away
thinking.
can you do it?
Right. We did get support. The cool thing was on this grant application specifically is we got support from MSU, their PD, because Palm sends deputies down there for the cat games. And they said, well, if you guys bring this down, we'll send you a letter of support during those games when you guys come. So that helps when you get other jurisdictions to write
Yeah,
support. So
big one
anyway,
like that.
so that was cool. We did update our emergency reverse notification contract with Code Red. I'm still working on trying to get all those groups established. Just that is more of a time issue than anything. But I'm excited. It's working. Seems like I'm excited about some new capabilities that I'll roll out in the future once I get it all set up. What else is going on? Exercises, as we mentioned, one of the key, the two upcoming meetings, the big one is the senior officials meeting, that one on May 6th that we were talking about. I'll make sure I clarify with Ginger, because when I scheduled it, she was
Okay with it.
okay with me being in here, but that was 2 or 3 weeks ago, so, but I'm assuming she would have.
I would think that would have been on her radar,
Right.
maybe, like Helen said, it's just, we can't be in here in the afternoon, maybe.
And if nothing else, we might have to tell everybody to use this door if we are able to use it.
Well, and I did, when I set the invitation out, I actually did a Google Street View picture, because sometimes it's hard, and I was gonna look for a sandwich board. Do we have sandwich boards somewhere?
Well,
I think they probably have vote here ones you could cover.
Yeah,
There's something to
something.
sit out there on
Department might.
that morning. I'll look into it, but,
Pat might have one somewhere.
cause that
A
might be
sidewalk closed sign we could cover over or something.
something, right? Anyway, I'll look into that. So that was my game plan for that, but that is I've got really good response, so far. I did talk to Ginger, and she's gonna clear these tables out for me. She said she'd wheel them out, because we're gonna have fairly decent number of people here, to include our, state senator. I think Marta might be coming. I don't know for sure. I haven't heard, but then all of the, your line officers, so the, unit manager for DNRC is gonna be here, same with BLM, Forest Service, from both forests. Quite a few folks, so,
Nice.
the main goal is to kind of lay out some expectations for, I like to do this every year, and it seems like it can be repetitive, but I think it's important for them to hear what the county needs and wants, for fires, and then give you guys an opportunity.
We don't want them to start.
Well, I'll give you an
You do that.
opportunity, right, I'll see what I can do about that, but then give you the opportunity to ask questions of any of us for this, so. That's the primary role for that, and we do it every year. Seems to work out pretty well, hopefully. Anything else going on? Again, I'm still taking part in the cat team. This is my 3rd year on that. I'm less, I know I spoke to you guys previously about the communications advanced team, which the Northern Rockies was talking about. I'm gonna be surprised if that's actually constituted, given the national situation with wildfire stuff. It's been crickets on that since they started that process, so I'm betting that because a lot of those support positions have been cut. And so stuff like that, there's gonna be wildfire impacts, especially for those larger teams this summer. it just is what it is. So I'm not terribly optimistic of being involved in that, even though I'd still like to learn some of that stuff.
We're gonna get more, depending on where it is, let it burn type stuff.
It's certainly possible, given the resource, if they don't have teams that can manage that stuff, it very well could be, we don't have the team to come in and manage this, or it's gonna push a lot more stuff down up to the local level. If it's all on forest ground, then yes, it very well could be. We could have stuff that's burning back there longer because they just don't have the ground pounders we have, and they've hired. It's the man, I mean, it takes a lot to manage all those people, and that's what they don't have.
Food and communications and.
Communication, logistics, right? Just like with anything else, that's the backbone. And so there's gonna be a lot of, I've talked to several of them, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, at the senior officials meeting, is clarifying where they're at. They're, of course, and understandably so, cagey a little bit about what they do and don't have capability wise, but from what I've been able to glean, it's not looking great, especially for the big teams. Now, the cat team is different because it's a state sponsored team, and so that's a good thing, but of course, we don't have jurisdiction over federal ground, so we have to be ready to play catch, though, when those things blow out of there, so that we could definitely see some this summer, depending on how things go. So anyway, from a response perspective, my concern is those big teams are gonna be less available, I think. And then I don't know how this is gonna play out with the legislature. They did change that within 5 miles of a state or private property, authorizing DNRC to go fight a fire on federal ground. I don't know that they'll actually, some of the folks, the line folks at DNRC are not gonna be interested in doing that, I don't think. I don't think they can say that publicly, but I think they're concerned because they have, there's risks in going into any of those places, so. And that doesn't change what agency it is, so. Anyway, so that's what's going on with response. On the mitigation side of stuff, I will be ramping up public information stuff for wildfire. I'm gonna submit some articles like I always do for the paper, do some radio spots and social media and all that kind of stuff. Just the usual stuff that people don't pay attention to when they're smoking here. But we still have to do it.
I know it might have been done since then. When I used it, there was money available for people to do mitigation on their property. Is any of that still out? I think Pat McKelvey ran it or something.
Yeah, so that's Tri-County Fire Safe Working Group, and that does still exist, and we actually have a grant that they are performing the work towards, but it's a very small grant, and all they're doing is assessments. The physical work has been really, they've cut that big. So they've been able to finish some of the stuff that have done, and they've done quite a bit, but that's a huge question mark going forward. Mitigation funding is disappearing in a hurry.
I was just thinking the newspaper's asking us about columns from the commissioners, and that I might get with you and we can do one on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to put it out and let people, cause I used it for my property years ago.
Yep.
And it worked really good. But then I look around and my trees are 6 feet to a
Yep.
limb and
Yep.
my grass is down but then I look around me and I'm like, well, this ain't good.
Right.
So I was just wondering if there was something.
They have, so. And I wasn't able to go last month. We still try to attend are you going to that, or are you still going to that when you get a chance? Trico meetings. And they have some opportunities, but it's changed a lot, because I did it on my property too, quite a few years ago. And it's changed a lot. It's very targeted. So it changed from whoever came in the door, you could ask for mitigation work. It was just open to anybody. Now, then it changed to targeted implementation. It had to be within so many miles of the prescribed burn, for example, or a DNRC thinning project or something
About
like
power
that.
lines and stuff.
Well, it depends on, it has to know of some other component of fuel reduction. So if the DNRC or Forest Service, because it's essentially Forest Service funding. And so they put that limitation, well, it needs to be done close to where we're doing our work. Now we have partnered with last year it was Northwestern Energy and along the right of way on the north end, Bear went out and did, they cut some trees down and then Bear went out and cleaned up what people didn't take for firewood, and that worked really well. DNRC was part of that, Vigilante Electric's been a part of that. Again, that just comes to availability for both Bear staff time and then for DNRC who did the cutting, which it worked good because it was training for their guys to do some cider stuff right on the side of the road. That's pretty limited, but it did make an impact there on Mount Gulch, but there's a ton of areas that, as you know, that up there is.
Yep.
But we can talk, the struggle is what funding for mitigation is the biggest hit right now. Those brick funds, what used to be the PDM grants,
Yep.
those are all gone. And that is the driver for what paid for a lot of this mitigation funding. So going forward, that's a hard thing to sell. And so my perspective is making sure people know what they can do to their own property because it is, it has to be a shared responsibility. We can't do everything. So trying to keep people aware of what they can do to make a difference. So that's the approach that we're taking. The other item I did want to mention is those wildfire detection cameras. I'm not sure if you remember that, but so Northwestern Energy partnered. They hung a couple of their cameras, well, just one in Jefferson County right now, but it's on the Beacon Hill site. They put some wildfire detection cameras and we got access to those. So I have admin access so I can zoom in and look and see, and an example of we had that fire out, that structure fire on the north end, and it did detect that. It came across just about the same time as the 911 call, so you're always curious how well these things work, and they do get false readings. Or I don't call them false. They're, when somebody's has a burn pile going, notice, right?
Pick that up.
Right. So, but it lets you cross-reference and you can say, hey, this is a burn pile or this might be a start. So, we'll see how it all pans out. If my phone is blowing up from notifications, I would not be happy on false stuff, but so far it's been good. So that's kind of an exciting thing. And they gave us access, not just to that tower, but the towers that surround Jefferson County that you can look into Jefferson County. So there's one in Winston, there was one on Mac Pass, but that one, when that tower fell over, it took out their camera, a brand new camera. And then there's some down in the south end in Butte, and then there's one down by Three Forks, so you can see into the county. So anyway, pretty cool tool.
The
Another,
LEPC meeting we were at, and maybe I misunderstood. I thought there was one up here on Depot Hill.
they were talking about putting one up there,
I
but
thought they were gonna put that one up there. They were talking. It's
They-
the other way around.
they were talking about putting one up there, but they haven't yet.
Okay.
So, they are adding, they said they were gonna add 10 more or 20 more. He wasn't positive. And they may become, they are invited to that senior officials meeting too, so we could ask them that question, but, they haven't approached us to hang anything on our tower, but there's that other tower that's up there too, so. And they try not to do that. They want to hang it on their own infrastructure, which I understand, but I'd be able to see it in the map if they put it up, so. We'll see. Long story short. Fire warden stuff, the only one thing I just wanted to mention specifically as it relates to debris burning, to just kind of a reminder of how the process that I do that for every year. I had emailed out, we have a kind of a plan. It gives me the data points that I look at, lets everybody else know the data points that we look at for when we start making restrictions for debris burning. I poll the departments, all the fire departments in the county, and say, if you guys, once we start getting there, making decisions on whether they want to close debris burning. That's just stuff 48 inches or larger, right? When it comes to campfire stuff, those are the stage restrictions, stage 1, stage 2, and then area closures. That stuff gets coordinated between us and then the Forest Service, both the BBRD and the Helena, and then DNRC. And so it gets more complicated because there's more people involved. And so, but when we get to those points, I do ask for your opinion on that. And usually it happens like on a Sunday night or Monday morning, depends on when they hold that coordination call. And I just ask for input. Are you guys, Do you want to see some closures? Do you want to, and the important thing for me at least is to make sure we try to be consistent with what everybody else is doing, which is difficult because usually the Helena and the B-Bar-D do different things. Because we are mostly B-Bar-D, I generally follow what the B-Bar-D does. Doesn't always work that way. It just kind of depends on conditions and stuff, but that's usually my recommendation is we follow the B-Bar-D. So people aren't confused about where I can have a fire and where I can't, or what restrictions are in place. So anyway, just kind of a reminder of how that comes, and that'll be a few more months here, probably in late June, July, depending on the conditions. You'll start seeing that stuff from me, and then I'll be texting you also, all of you, for my plan was for wildfire notifications when we have stuff. I'm not gonna bother you with smaller stuff. Of course, if you have questions, feel free to reach out, but if you want more, I can give you more, but impactful stuff that could be visible or that you might get calls on. My goal is to try to have an answer if somebody's calling you about it. So, but if you want more, or even if it's just a little smoke and you're not sure, call me and I can find out about it. But I do that by text if that's okay with everybody. I think it's fairly efficient. So that's that. Trying to think of what else I might have for you. Some of these details of the county events ordinance situation. I did have my first meeting with the Headwaters Country Jam, which was good. They reached out and said, hey, let's do some coordination on this. And I did send them the draft. Steve had mentioned that he wanted to do some edits to it. So I made it very clear to them that it was a draft, but the primary points of it, I think are stuff that we are gonna want to ask for, that you'll have to consider as far as.
Cause we kind of
approvals.
talked about redoing that, didn't we?
That's what they're working.
That's what this is,
That's what I
yeah,
thought.
yeah. So the approach is different than the current is the application that's been in place forever. And I think there were our insurance company specifically had some concerns about that. And so it's been changed to a contract format. And added more specificity with regard to requirements specifically for law enforcement, fire and EMS services, and what they will have and what we will provide. And obviously increase the fee, because we're not capturing what it costs to cover all that
And
stuff.
probably never will.
Probably not, but depending on what funding, I mean, at least if we, broke even, that would be something, but anyway, that is going on. Moving target again, I'm not sure when, Steve will have that. I know he's working on some other legal stuff that he has to deal with, so, I'll keep bothering him, and as soon as we want to get that in place as soon as we can, is my goal. Any questions on that?
We might have to dump the ordinance, we might have to rescind that, or
He was thinking we would have to we do it at the same time, I think, we'd get rid of the ordinance that's in place that establishes the current application, and then adopt this new contract. And it's written in such a way to be generic, so it's not, it right now, obviously applies to Headwaters, but in case somebody else came along and wanted to start up the Rocking the Rivers again or something like that, depending on the size of estimated size. So anyway, it's a labor of love, hopefully. At some point.
we'll be
But-
a lot better covered now with this.
It's
Provision.
a stress. I mean, the county has some serious liability in there, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not a legal mind by any means, but it just seems,
In some ways, I mean, it's been discussed for years,
yeah,
what we could do and what we should do and what we don't have to do. But it really wasn't, it was literally an application process.
Right.
It was,
and that application process is similar. I've talked to, and I think that came about after the rainbows, if
Good,
memory
good.
serves. And I was talking to Beaverhead County, and they had theirs. I said, oh, well, when I was first looking into that, let me send you ours, and it was exactly the same. So I know that was passed around at some
what
point.
about the one in
But
Mark County?
Marr County, I did talk to
They do
John
something
Lop, and the county is totally hands off. They don't have an approval, but that's a much different event because they don't have the issues that we have with this one because of of the makeup of the event, I think. But the county doesn't, they have a very small presence, and they do contract for EMS and they contract for fire, I believe, but law enforcement it's very hands-off, the county is. I've also talked to, well, Steve also talked to his counterparts up in Flathead, because they have that Under the Big Sky, I think it's called, which is a big event. And then interestingly, I went over, Missoula County is hosting there's somebody that's coming in this summer to host a little bit different because it's actually within the city limits, so they have a little more authority over what they can and can't do. But I went in and sat in with their promoter, that they actually came out and sat with them and said, let's coordinate this, right? Which is the way it should be. And anyway, the security guy for that actually knows the head of security for all of Live Nation, and he put me in contact with him. So I got his contact. So a lot of times it's important to just meet some of these people so you can make contact with those. So, but I haven't done that yet because I kind of want to let the process play out and see how it goes to make sure, but I don't want to just jump over somebody's head or whatever, but it's nice to have that tool in the pocket, at least, we'll put it that way. So anyway, so that's what's going on there. I'm just always been very concerned about the counties, not just the county, but the fire service and EMS coverage and all that stuff down there. It is challenging. So hopefully this will help. Anyway, the only other thing to make sure to keep on your radar is those public safety power shutoffs. They have brought in a new public information officer for Northwestern Energy, and they are reaching out to specific government agencies again, but they haven't done much outreach to the public. And so I keep hammering on them. It's good that you're talking to us, but at the same time, your job is to reach out to the public, your customers, right? Because last year when they did this, it
Because
was
we're
a
gonna say
brainer.
call Northwest Energy.
Right.
They did pretty good after the fact, but.
After the fact,
After the
right?
fact, yeah.
Because they blew it up. And so anyway, but it's people are probably gonna, and rightfully so, being concerned, right? We're a county that's dependent on that, a lot of areas, especially, for well water and things like that outside the city limits. So, but they're still an important tool to prevent fires, because we certainly have had fires that start specifically from down power lines. I know Vigilante Electric is also reaching out to the folks both in the south end of the county and up in the north end of the county for their customers because of this issue as well.
Are they talking about doing the same thing?
Well, they're in there, yes, but it defaults because they get their power from Northwestern Energy. So if Northwestern shuts off, they're off. So but their point is we still need to be
Collateral
talking to our,
damage.
right, their collateral damage, but they still need to reach out to their customers so they're aware of it. And so that's what I think they're doing. And so anyway, work in progress on that. So I think that about covers me for what I've got, kind of the broad strokes. I do send out that monthly, kind of a thing that I wanted to continue doing. I think it's important for you guys to be able to drill down if you have questions or know what I'm doing. So I'm not just hiding away I'm not in the basement anymore. But anyway, questions, concerns, comments?
You're doing a great job. You're one of the people that we don't have to worry about not using their time wisely.
I have a lot of
We're
time.
not sending us information they have.
I've got a lot of information. And I feel bad about that sometimes because I know I flood with information, but I'd much rather give too much than too little.
Yeah.
You can always delete something in my view.
The only thing it does is it gets me in the weeds sometimes. So I read through some of your stuff and I'm like, I better look at this. And then I end up somewhere else.
Start doing rabbit holes.
I'm like,
Yep. Well, I appreciate it. All right, well, as always, call, email whenever if ever you have questions. I'm sure we'll be in touch quite a bit more as the fire season goes on. But